Look what you did! You killed him! You killed my... How?
So while Scarecrow was an awful movie, it was a wonderful kind of awful. It had a self-awareness that suggested that the producers wanted to make it just for fun, and it shows. It's one of the corniest, cliched, surprisingly entertaining horror movies I've ever seen. So when I saw that it had a sequel, Scarecrow Slayer, which was hard to miss with the double pack I got these two movies on, I was kind of excited. The idea for a franchise has potential, especially if they make the situation just as ludicrous as the character acts. Send them to Vegas, throw in a psychic child, have them battle other monsters, put them on the moon! If they want to take the Scarecrow character and put him in ridiculous situations, make a parody or at least an over-the-top portrayal of horror tropes, that would make this one of the most awesomely bad horror franchises ever. Heck, the beginning of this movie seems to suggest that it's going to be just as over-the-top and cheesy as the last one. We have an arm moving around, some terrible acting, and a guy getting impaled on a pitchfork. Everything you'd expect from a sequel to one of the craziest horror movies ever seems to be present. And I'm here to say that the rest of the movie is nothing like its first 2 minutes and has none of the charm or fun of the first movie. In fact, it's one of the most pointless, forgettable movies I've seen recently, so let's talk about it before it's fully expelled from my mind. Like I said, the movie starts with the farmer getting killed by a demonic scarecrow. 35 years later, his son Caleb has captured it and become obsessed with the creature, writing books and touring the country to report on his findings, and that's netted him a bit of a reputation as a lunatic. Things take a turn for the unfortunate when fraternity pledges Dave and Carl attempt to steal the Scarecrow from his field, and he mistakes Dave for the demon, accidentally killing him. However, that bonds Dave's soul to the Scarecrow, reanimating it. In the confusion, Caleb, as well as Dave's friends Mary and Judy, are injured and sent to the hospital, where the Scarecrow kills Caleb. With Caleb gone, the Dave Scarecrow turns his attention to his ex-girlfriend Mary, whom he intends to, well, marry, which involves turning her into a scarecrow as well. Will Mary escape this first draft Batman villain? Is the only emotion in this movie obnoxious whining? While the first movie was incompetent, it at least had this attitude that the people behind it really wanted to make it. They wanted to film scenes similar to their favorite horror comedies, and somehow stitch them into a semblance of a movie. And it's this love and dedication that made the first movie so enjoyable. This movie just feels like they wanted to make a movie. Heck, it doesn't even feel like that. It feels like they wanted to make some money, so they made a quick movie. They probably had some half-finished generic slasher script lying around, and they slapped the Scarecrow name on it and threw in the original costume just to somehow tie their cynical cash grab in with a movie that was actually entertaining. And what they churned out is about as lazy, boring, and underwhelming as these kinds of movies get. The first movie wasn't a movie as much as it was a collection of scenes the producers wanted to see. They wanted to create a horror movie similar to the ones they enjoyed, so they reached into the bag of cliches, made the scenes as over the top as they could, and edited it in a way that made it somewhat of a coherent narrative. This movie is actually filmed like a movie, with a clear beginning, middle, and end. And that sounds like a good thing, but now I have to judge this movie as a movie. And as a movie, it sucks! The movie's biggest problem is the common sin made by a lot of other low-budget movies. It's over-reliance on filler. We get long, drawn-out scenes of what amounts to nothing, just stuff that doesn't affect the plot or establish character or setting. Don't get me wrong, the first movie was also packed with filler, but they at least changed it up a bit, gave us shots of different locations and alternated between ambient settings and characters talking. Here, it's all talking. Just characters standing around, talking, whining, and pretending that they're more than just kill fodder. That would be okay if anyone was interesting, or if what they were saying was engaging. It's not. Nobody uniquely reacts to their situations or even has a casual conversation. It's all just what everyone says in every other slasher movie. I'm scared! I'm horny. I don't believe in the monster. Now I do believe in the monster. Exposition about why I'm special. Just stretch that out to 90 minutes and presto, instant movie. Even the opening plot is just filler. Why do we need a detailed reason why this guy shot this other guy? He was trespassing on his land, stealing his scarecrow and making it look like the scarecrow was moving. I'd understand if the farmer just had an itchy trigger finger. He's not even around long enough to say anything to help the other characters. With all his years of scarecrow research, you'd think he'd be that wise guy who the characters go to for help, but nope. All his dialogue consists of, "This scarecrow killed my dad. It's a demon. I've dedicated my life to studying it," without telling us anything he was studying before he's chopped up like a steak. You could cut this character and his plot out of the movie, just have him around to shoot Dave, and you wouldn't miss a thing. But hey, gotta make that running time somehow. Just have him gasp out his dialogue like he was Joe Morton in Terminator 2.
What a relief it is to know that your life isn't the joke you thought it could be.
Still, I guess this is a character that had a character because, believe it or not, the acting in this movie is actually worse than the first one. Oh, the first one was atrocious, with most of the actors clearly having never been in front of a camera before, but I at least got some personality out of them and could tell which was which. Here, everyone's on autopilot. For most of the movie, all these characters just have this blank stare, like they were handed the script 30 seconds before they went on screen and they didn't even have time to learn their character's name. And whenever there is emotion, it's like they want to get their reaction over as quickly as possible so they can finish the screen and grab some catering. Smile for half a second. Cry for the time it takes to blink. Ah, okay, I'm done. Nobody gives the slightest hint of a unique performance, so nobody stands out. I don't know thing one about any of them because there's not one thing from any of them. Heck, even when there is a character with enough personality to stand out, I don't know how I'm supposed to react to them. There's a sheriff guy who's here to be the typical horror sheriff. Walk around the crime scene, make snide remarks, accuse the girlfriend of all the murders because he doesn't believe there's a monster, change his tune when the monster appears, then help the main targets out until he inevitably dies. Sure, he's a cliché, but I at least identify him as a character. We also learn that his partner is also his wife and that she's about to give birth, so he doesn't want her to work on such a stressful case and put her and the baby at risk. Okay, so he's a loving and empathetic guy who loves his wife and wants to help her however he can. He's in bed with another woman in the next scene. I'm sorry, what light are we supposed to see this guy in? He flip-flops between being a nice guy and being a total douche so quickly you could call him Sheriff Ikaruga. He's the one character with character, but they can't decide which one character he is. The only thing notable about the characters is, like the first movie, how eclectic some of the casting is. Top billing goes to the aforementioned farmer Caleb, played by Tony Todd. Yes, the Candyman and Darkseid himself. I'll give credit that he's at least in a good chunk of the movie, unlike the first Scarecrow and other budget horrors that just sneeze their guest stars at us. But like I said, most of his screen time is just talking about things that don't affect the plot, so he was still just brought in to give the movie name value. Also, hello DC Douglas, hope you enjoyed your first flight with the Asylum because they're gonna have their talons in you for a while. But fine, this is all just the kill fodder. The stock Unity assets placed in so the designers can focus on the main player character, so to speak. We all loved the first movie because of the Scarecrow and how messily yet awesomely he was portrayed. He was funny, he was over the top, he was every slasher monster cliche wrapped up in one glorious package. We can overlook this movie's problems if it means getting more of what made the first movie great. And this movie does not know how to use him. I get that they're trying to pass this off as a different Scarecrow monster, but it's the same name, same costume, even the same guy playing him, so it doesn't work. It's like getting Robert Englund to reprise Freddy, then they try to pass him off as Freddy's less impressive brother Eddie. You see this guy, and you expect the character from the first movie. Instead, it's about as vanilla performance as any cookie-cutter slasher film. All he does for most of the movie is stand around, walk, and whatever this is. He doesn't even speak. He's completely mute, doesn't even let out a grunt or a laugh or anything. And part of the fun of this character was his knockoff Freddy voice and quips.
What the hell are you?
Well, I'm a friendly Scarecrow, of course.
He's made so bland, the movie itself seems to forget he's in it. There will be long, tedious sections of obnoxious filler in between maybe 15 minutes total of Scarecrow screen time. Again, this was something they did in the first movie, spaced out the Scarecrow kill scenes with collections of talking and establishing shots, but characters still talked about the Scarecrow, and we got a shot every now and then of him hanging on his post to remind us he exists. And when he did appear, it was so over the top and awesome, it left an impact making you crave more. Here, even when he is on screen, he leaves behind no impression whatsoever, to the point that in the middle of a scene you might go, wait, where did he come from? Oh, right, he's been here the last 2 minutes. Even the deaths are pathetic. Most of them happen partially or fully off screen, and the ones they do show barely qualify for an R rating. That's not to say the kill scenes were that graphic in the first one, but they were cartoonish and inventive. He killed a guy with an ear of corn, for crying out loud! Here, I think the death that comes closest to being creative is when he squishes a guy behind a door. Some of the deaths I can't even make out. What is he even doing? It just looks like he taped Twizzlers to this guy's face. For a genre that lives or dies on how its characters live or die, these are some of the most unmemorable kill shots I've seen in a slasher movie. What is memorable is just how bad the editing and effects are. The first movie had horrible editing, but it still followed somewhat of a beginning to end structure and knew when to cut a scene. This movie has countless scenes that just drag on for what feels like an eternity. The first scene after the credits, we're practically in the same location for nearly 20 minutes before the guy becomes the Scarecrow. And at some points, it'll cut to earlier scenes of the Scarecrow milling about in the field, despite having moved from that spot several scenes ago. And all of it is covered in this ugly purple filter. The first movie knew it was cheap, so it stuck to practical effects and whatever props it had on hand. This one tries to be ambitious, so it incorporates digital effects, and it's all we don't give a crap digital effects. They substituted green screen for some outside shots, giving characters the most obvious outlines since Phantasmagoria. And it's sure a nice superimposed cloudy night out, where you can clearly see where they cut around the picture they were using. Oh, but you want to see one of the worst effects in this? Or any other movie? Mary's sneaking out of the top floor of a college dorm. She accidentally lets go of the rope, and they forgot to animate her. It's an awful grainy effect to begin with, but they actually forgot to either shrink the front layer or zoom in the back layer to make it look like she's falling to the ground. If they couldn't go back to fix it, they could have just cut it and not changed a thing, so this had to be intentional. Somebody was trying to see if anyone was paying attention, so they didn't bother with this effect, and the people in charge of screening this movie didn't bother to get back to them. When you're making my green screen effects look good, it's time to reevaluate your career. The movie's biggest draw is the promise of a battle between two demonic scarecrows at the end, and yeah, that sounds awesome. Sort of like a budget Freddy vs. Jason. But it's just as pathetic as the rest of the movie. Not only is it shot so darkly and with more purple filter than Purple Rain, but it's obvious one of the stuntmen had more training than the other. The first Scarecrow is doing his trademark flips and kicks, while this new guy clumsily swings around a pole and is thrown around like a sack of corn. And the whole fight only lasts 2 minutes, with the original Scarecrow easily dispatching the cheap fake. So it was less Godzilla vs. King Kong and more Godzilla versus that kamikaze guy from Kingdom of Monsters. Is there anything I like about this movie? Well, I like these trippy possession scenes when the characters and Scarecrows bond. They're short, erratic, and still have that purple filter, but it works for shots meant to be surreal. Todd Rex is back to play the Scarecrow again, and even though he doesn't talk, he's still anxious to show us his backflips. I guess I can respect the movie for trying to give lore to the Scarecrow, that it's creative from binding the souls of those killed in anger with a demonic possession, so the result is a deadly combination of dual personalities constantly confused and in conflict, hence why they go after familiar faces but will kill anyone remotely in their way. But that's mostly me just trying to fill in the gaps. So yeah, two of the same scenes, the acrobatics of the Scarecrow, and mythology I mostly made up just to tie what they say in with the rest of the movie. Totally balanced pros and cons here. This movie is a mess. A bland, stale, cynical mess. It was one of the worst horror movies out there. No, not by a long shot. It's not even the worst horror sequel I've seen. It's not offensive or leaves me feeling unclean, it's just boring and paint by numbers. I'll probably fondly remember the first movie for the rest of my life. This movie, I'll likely forget I saw it by next week. And I know there's a third movie in the series, but it wasn't produced or released by the Asylum, so I'm gonna skip it. If you want to watch this movie just so you can say you watched the Scarecrow series, whatever, go ahead. But if you're looking for something as insanely fun as the first movie, go find something with a little more stuffing. Well, the Asylum's found their groove, so let's see what they throw at us next. And look at that, I don't even need to show a poster for the next movie. Hey there everyone, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider supporting me on Patreon and help me create even more content like this. It's only $1 to get early access to my videos, and only $5 gets you a credit at the end of each of those videos, with higher tiers offering these and even more perks. And as you help me reach certain goals, I have super special content lined up for all of you. Head on over and check out my Patreon today, and I'll see you next time.